What's up, everybody? We're back with another edition of the Ad Podcast. And today I have a very exciting guest for you guys to meet. Jacob Zuppke is the CEO, president, and board member of Whisker. And if you guys haven't heard of Whisker, you've been hiding under a rock. They're the fastest growing, biggest robot manufacturer for the pet industry, known probably originally for their self-cleaning cat litter boxes, but they are building a massive R&D facility and expanding on their manufacturing capability in Michigan and bringing out awesome new products in the pet and tech industry. Seems like almost on a quarterly basis at this point. But Jacob, thanks so much for coming on the show, sir.
Thank you for having us, and I appreciate that very thoughtful background and description. I don't think I could have said it much better.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, I would love to start the show into diving into your background a bit. I always love to track the entrepreneur's journey. I think there's several questions that I want to dive into about your background, but I'd love to start from the beginning. In an interview that I read about you recently, it mentioned that you had started 2 LLCs, but by the time you were 17. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs have these funny stories from their childhood where they, tried to start a business. The one that I always joke about is I went door to door selling caterpillars at my dad's home in Hermosa Beach that I would visit during the summer. And not as daunting as starting LLCs by the time I was 17, but I think it does show just, most entrepreneurs that I talk to have some type of story from their childhood. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about where you grew up, how you grew up, and where you first started to get that entrepreneurial itch.
So you had caterpillars and I had painted rocks from my neighbor's house that when we were really young, we would take their painted rocks and sell them right back to them. And Fortunately, they themselves were entrepreneurs, and I think they appreciated seeing these young kids next door trying to create commerce at such a young age. But I grew up in the suburbs of Detroit, area called Bloomfield Hills. I grew up with really just my dad. My mom had passed away when I was 11. So it was me, my brother, my dad, and then later my stepmom and stepbrother. But from a young age, I saw my dad always work for himself. So he was an attorney, so a little less of, I would say more the entrepreneurial path where he had worked for himself. So less of a business, more of a personal practice, but he had always worked for himself. And I think he always had that flexibility, and less for me about the flexibility of more of just, I think he always got to call his own shots. And I would say maybe I subconsciously saw that growing up and didn't really know what it meant. But I think from a young age, whether it be the rocks that we were selling or TJ Bagel that I started right when we turned 16, where we were doing a bagel delivery route on Sunday mornings, lived in a heavily Jewish area. I've got a background. I grew up Jewish, and, bagels and our community, they tend to go well together. And so we, from a young age, a buddy of mine and I started a bagel delivery route. And Sunday mornings, I think it was at like 5:30 a.m., we'd get to Brooklyn Bagel and we would go and pack up our kits and we would go and drop them off at everybody's house. And it was our first legal LLC. And I learned firsthand that the U.S. government does not like you opening people's mailboxes. So we got a letter from the USPS, I believe it was, saying you are not allowed to insert your flyers inside the mailbox. You have to put them on the outside. And it was a quick learning lesson, but it was a really cool experience, kind of going through the process of starting an LLC, learning what that actually meant to do it right. And then following that, we started At Your Service Poop Patrol, which is funny that I did that early and
a
version of that. At Your Service Poop Patrol, Zuppke services, and a very early non-technological version of an Uber called Designated Dave, all of which we started, I think, between 16 and 18 with a couple buddies of mine. So learned a lot about it. And I think fast forwarding almost 20 years now, one of the things that I saw as a through line through all of this was I was a marketer, and I didn't really know what that meant until later. But my favorite part about all these businesses was starting the logo, getting t-shirts made, finding a way to educate people on what we were doing in a creative way. And I can share a story about that here shortly, but
Yeah.
that was kind of a through line that I've been able to reflect on now since. Of I always really liked the storytelling aspect of what we were selling, and that's something that I think through all my journeys now has been a creative point for me, and an area, a strong suit for me, that has now played out in a more meaningful way here at Whisker.
Yeah, no, I love that. And then you studied digital marketing and advertising in college as well, if I read correctly.
I think 4 or 5 majors later, for whatever reason, I didn't think that marketing was a degree that I wanted to graduate with, because I thought it was very general.
Mm.
And I think that was naivety more than anything, of just not really understanding what marketing could be for me. So I started with really all over the place, but at Oakland University, they had a entrepreneurship program. And then I switched to finance, thinking, you know what? I know I want to be an entrepreneur. I think that's what I want to do. I should get a finance degree. Took a finance class, had my, I think, one and only panic attack in life, where I actually walked out of a class because I did not understand a lot of what had happened in 2008 through 2010 with the housing collapse. And I was listening to all of this, and I just didn't process it all. And I walked out of the class, went to see a counselor, and it's probably one of the best things that's ever happened in my career. I happen to have a counselor whose name I don't remember, at Oakland University, who said to me, at University of Michigan, Dearborn, I'd already switched schools. And she said to me, didn't you start this startup called Oi, What a Deal? It was like a Groupon clone in 2010. And she's like, didn't you do this whole internet marketing thing? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, we have a new program called digital marketing.
Wow.
And it was that, that cutoff date in college where you've got like another day to get into all your classes. And it was the next morning.
Wow.
And so she's like, if you email the professor and you can get him to accept you into the program, you can switch. And so I did that. He ended up accepting me into that program. I made the switch. And after, at the time, I might have been 20, I think. I took the long 5.5-year college path. I dropped out for a year.
Not the victory lap.
Yeah. I dropped out for a year, did an entrepreneurship program, started the business, went back to school. And my whole life, I was a 3.0 student. Never tried harder, always got away without having to do that much. And switched to marketing. I 4-pointed everything while taking 18 credits, working 30 hours, and starting my first, I would say, more. And it was just that momently figured it out.
We're getting you getting that feedback?
I'm not.
Let me.
Said I know this is for pods. You're muted.
Okay.
All right.
Better?
Yeah, something about AirPods, but I don't know my Bluetooth. You guys have picked up.
Okay. Yeah, that's very interesting. I've seen that before.
Left off, but you have to it there.
Yeah. Let me. I'm getting a lot of feedback, so I'm gonna this quick. All right. How about? You might have to